Ever pulled an all-nighter back in high school?
Oh, yeah.
Whether it was for studying or just getting lost in a good book, I think we've all been there. But it turns out those late nights weren't just a rite of passage. They can actually have a big impact on teenagers and their well-being.
All right.
And that's what we're diving deep into today, why teenagers are staying up late and what effects it's having on them. We've got research, opinions, and perspectives from schools, parents, and even teens themselves.
Yeah, and it's interesting. There's been a lot of research showing that chronic sleep deprivation during those teenage years can actually have an impact on brain development, which can cause all sorts of issues long term with memory, focus, even emotional regulation.
Wait, hold on. If I'm remembering my high school biology correctly, isn't that when the brain is doing, like, its most important work?
Yeah.
That's a bit worrying, isn't it?
It is. Imagine, like, trying to learn and grow and navigate all the complexities of being a teenager,
Yeah.
but you're sleep deprived. It just
Yeah.
makes everything so much harder.
It's a recipe for disaster.
Yeah.
Okay, so that's the why this matters part, but let's get into the why it's happening. The research we've looked at points to three main culprits. Tech, and we all know how prevalent that is, the need for teenagers to connect with their friends, and of course the pressures of school.
And it's not just about, like, willpower or something.
Right.
Because we hear so much about, like, teenagers, they just don't have any willpower. But these platforms, social media, games, they're designed with all these reward systems, algorithms, and they all tap into that fear of missing out, which,
Yeah.
let's be honest, is just so strong during adolescence.
Oh, absolutely. Even as an adult, I find it really hard to tear myself away from my phone sometimes.
Yeah.
I can start with the best intentions, thinking I'll just check one notification and suddenly an hour's gone.
Exactly.
It's so easy to get sucked in.
And you think about teenagers, their social lives are just so important to them, and so much of that happens online now. So those late night chats, the gaming sessions, they're like the modern equivalent of, I don't know, hanging out at the mall or going to a football game after school.
Yeah, it's their social lifeline,
Mhm.
especially with all the homework and the extracurricular activities they're juggling.
Yeah.
Speaking of which, let's talk about this pressure on teens to excel academically.
Right.
Between homework, college applications, all that, it's no wonder they're up late studying.
It's true, and it ties into those broader societal expectations around achievement. For some teens, that pressure to succeed, well, it leads them to sacrifice sleep, to try and do it all. And the long-term impact of that stress
Yeah.
on their mental health is a real concern.
So we've got this perfect storm of tech, social interaction, pressure to succeed. It's like pulling these teenagers into my direction. But before we start confiscating phones and banning homework, let's talk about some potential solutions. One approach that our sources highlighted focuses on what schools can do, and it's like a two-pronged strategy: education and schedule adjustments.
Yeah, it's about giving them the tools and knowledge to really understand why sleep matters and, how to manage their time well so they're not constantly playing catch up. And those schedule adjustments are interesting too. Like we saw some schools that implemented later start times, or maybe they streamlined their extracurricular activities a little bit.
Okay.
And they actually saw some pretty positive changes, not just in like how much sleep students were getting, but even their academic performance.
So it's about working with teenagers' natural rhythms instead of trying to force them into a box.
Exactly.
But schools can't do it alone, can they?
No, they can.
What about the role of parents in all of this?
Well, parents are walking this tightrope
Right.
between setting those boundaries,
Yeah.
but then also providing support.
Right.
So it's like this delicate balance between saying, okay, it's time to put the devices away, but then also creating that home environment where healthy sleep is encouraged and supported.
It makes you wonder if maybe we need to rethink our own relationship with technology at home, too.
Well, absolutely.
Yeah.
Like lead by example.
Yeah, lead by example.
Because it's one thing to tell your teen to put the phone away,
Right.
but if they see you constantly scrolling or checking emails late at night, it's like,
Mixed messages.
yeah, it's mixed messages for sure.
Exactly. We're all part of this digital age.
We are
It's about finding that balance.
finding that balance. Exactly.
Speaking of finding balance, I think we need to address the elephant in the room. Or maybe it's the smartphone glowing under the pillow.
Right.
It seems like every time we talk about teenagers and sleep, we always end up back at technology.
And for good reason.
Yeah.
It's not just a distraction. It's fundamentally changing how we sleep.
Mm-hmm.
Like, think about how these devices are designed, the
Yeah.
constant notifications, that fear of missing out, the endless scroll of social media.
It's addictive.
It's totally addictive.
Yeah.
It's engineered to keep us hooked.
Mm-hmm.
And our brains, especially teenage brains, are wired to crave that novelty and that reward.
You're telling me I've definitely fallen victim to that, just one more video trap on more than one occasion?
Oh, yeah.
But it's not just the content itself, is it? There's something about the actual light from these devices that messes with our sleep.
The blue light.
Yeah.
Yeah, blue light has been shown to suppress the production of melatonin,
Okay.
which is that hormone that regulates our sleep-wake cycle.
Right.
So you might think you're winding down by scrolling through your phone,
Right.
but you're actually telling your brain to stay awake.
Wow. So it's like this biological betrayal.
It really is.
Our own devices are working against us. So is it all doom and gloom? Are we destined to live in a world of sleep-deprived teenagers glued to their screens?
I think there are definitely things we can do. And some of the advice we saw in our research was really good.
Okay.
Like establishing a consistent sleep schedule,
Right.
it can make a big difference.
Okay.
Like going to bed and waking up around the same time every day.
Oh, wow. Even on the weekends.
Even on weekends, yeah.
So you're saying like building those good habits and actually sticking to them.
Yeah, consistency is key when it comes to regulating that sleep-wake cycle.
That makes sense. But, teenagers, they want to like squeeze every minute out of their day.
Right.
How can we help them like actually prioritize sleep when there's always something else going on?
I think it's about reframing it a little bit.
Right. How do you mean?
Well, if you're constantly running on empty, you can't really enjoy any of those activities. It's like learning to prioritize saying no to things when you're feeling overwhelmed and actually scheduling time for relaxation.
Right. Making it a priority instead of an afterthought.
Exactly.
Okay. So I'm assuming part of that means putting the devices down,
Probably, yeah.
which we all know can feel like torture for some teenagers.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
What are some like realistic strategies that teenagers can actually use to like navigate that?
A lot of apps now have these features
Oh, yeah.
where you can track your screen time,
Right.
set limits for yourself even.
Okay.
So it's like having this built-in accountability partner.
Yeah, like your phone is telling you to get off your phone.
Pretty much. And
Yeah.
sometimes going old school works best.
How do you mean?
Like designate certain areas of the house as phone-free zones.
Okay.
Like maybe the bedroom is a tech-free sanctuary just for sleep.
Oh, I like that. Creating that separation between where you relax and recharge and then where you're like bombarded with information and notifications.
Yeah, exactly.
That's a great idea. But let's be real, telling a teenager to put down their phone is only half the battle. What can they do to like fill that time?
There are so many activities that are enjoyable and fulfilling but don't involve a screen.
Like what?
Oh, reading a good book,
Okay.
exploring a creative hobby like painting or writing,
Yeah.
learning an instrument.
Or just spending time with friends and family in person,
Exactly.
face to face.
It's about like reclaiming those simple pleasures, those activities that bring us joy and connection without all of the added pressure and stimulation of the digital world.
It's like a digital detox, but for your life.
Yeah, exactly.
Well, we've covered so much in this deep dive.
We have.
The science behind sleep, the pressures that teenagers are facing, some really practical strategies to help them prioritize rest. Any final thoughts for our listeners today?
I think the biggest takeaway is that sleep is not a luxury.
Right.
It's not something we can just afford to skimp on.
Yeah.
It's fundamental to our health, our well-being, our relationships.
It really affects everything, doesn't it?
It really does. It's time we started treating sleep as the essential pillar of health that it is.
Absolutely.
Not just for teenagers, but for everyone.
I couldn't agree more. Well said.